All right, so I'm the last segment before we get to snacks, so bear with me. This will be quick and variable, and it will be interactive. So a couple of housekeeping things. My name is Erik Harbison, CMO at AWeber. For those who don't know us, we are an email service provider for small businesses and emerging businesses. And our clients include ad tech, startups, entrepreneurs, agencies. So again, if you haven't heard of us, check us out. Today's talk is about you've got email problems. You don't know it, but you do. And I want to talk about some fixes for those problems. These are more philosophical problems that you have. And the fixes are tied into case studies. So a lot of good takeaways for today. Agenda real quick. I have one request of everybody here. We'll get into a couple of case studies. And I'll provide you with 3 takeaways. Sound good? So, everybody stand, please. Quick and painless, I promise. So, look around the room. Everybody is here. Today's about the future of digital marketing. And like Will, who hates the phrase viral, spending a lot of time in marketing channels, especially email. A couple things I hate about what I hear about the email, the perceptions about email, are 2 things. If we were to ask people outside of this room today what you think about email, what do you think you'll hear? Good one. Anyone else? Yes. So e-blast and I bought a list. E-blast, I bought a list. We're all guilty. We've all done it at some point in our lives. But today, I want you guys to commit to a pledge. This is the future of digital marketing. Everyone here starts with you. The commitment is we will try to give email a better name, let people know what it's used for. We'll get into some examples of how it's used for power and for good. So the pledge is simple. Right hand. Raise your right hand, please. Raise your right hand, please. I promise to never use the word e-blast again. And I promise to never buy an email list again. Thank you. So, right, and when you find yourselves doing these things when you leave today, just remember this conversation that we had and the pledge that you took. So a couple stats to set the stage here. This came from eConsultancy. 1 out of 3 of us marketers have no plan for mobile responsive emails. A little shocking considering that the percentage of opening emails on a mobile device is 40 to 60%. So a lot of engagement, a lot of use, not a lot of time or strategy, maybe tied to resources, maybe tied to not something on the roadmap, or maybe just not realizing the power of email. And then McKinsey released a study, you may have seen this one as well, that email is actually 40 times greater than our friends at Facebook and Twitter when it comes to acquisition. So think about that for a minute. Email is only second to SEO, which we all know is very powerful when it comes to acquisition, but again, 40 times greater than social. So the good thing about this stat is it lets us know that email is good for something other than sending an email, pushing something to your customers. The great thing about this stat is that it provides an opportunity that there's a way for email and social and SEO and all things to work together more. If you think about it, this stat is great, but it pinpoints the opportunity that it isn't just about doing email, it isn't just about doing social, and we heard some of that earlier today. That's all about how you integrate all your marketing efforts. So this ties into our first problem. And you know you do it, which is okay, but you're considering email a channel. And what I mean by that is you fall into the symptoms of a push message only, what we call a dead push. So you're sending an email to your customers just announcing something, not having any action tied to it other than just a push. So when you do that frequently for your clients and your customers and your friends or whomever you're emailing, that's email as a channel. Now, what I ask you to take away today is think about email as a discipline. What do I mean by that? So as a discipline, there's a lot more to it than just one single action. When you think about email as a discipline, there's things like a knowledge base. Someone in your organization should be identified as the centers of excellence lead around email. And if there isn't, it's time to start thinking about that because of all the opportunity that is tied to email as a discipline. So there should be resources, knowledge bases. There's kind of a shared connection across all the things you're doing that can start or end or be influenced by email. So today, a lot of us do the engagement and the optimization. Send an email, forward to a friend, all those things. But what about list growth? You've got 5,000 customers. Is that enough? Knowing that you can get a lot more? And then advocacy. I come from an agency background, did a lot of work with a lot of retailers. And advocacy with email, in my mind, is knowing that every 10 shares that occurs from an email that you send is $1 in revenue. 10 shares, $1 revenue. You have programs that are generating thousands and thousands of shares. That's a lot of money. Missed money in some cases if companies and brands are not embracing it. But again, email as a discipline, including advocacy. So let's talk about the first case study tied to looking at email as more than just a discipline, specifically list growth. So Nikki in Stitches is an AWeber customer. She is a local entrepreneur that has prided herself on growing her business around connecting with her customers. Customer service number one. And to the point where she knew that she really needed and thought she could get more customers or more visitors to convert to customers because everyone was having such a great experience with her. And the question was, how do I do that at scale? How can I do that, not onesie twosies, but how can I do that in hundreds? So what she had incorporated was what I'll call a relevant interruption. We all hate interruptions unless they're relevant. So Nikki was able to implement something that was a relevant interruption. So current state was your typical sign-up box that you see on most blogs, most sites, asking you to put in some information to get something. This was great at converting a couple hundred or so a month. And again, knowing that there's a better way to do this, or is there a better way to do this, to convert more of my visitors into customers that I cherish so much. Whoops. So here's what she did. We all know this as a light box, right? We've all tested it, we've tried it before. The point here is that this was not about a light box solution. This was about, again, knowing about your business, knowing about your customers. If you have a blog, you know about your customers, you want to know more about your customers, and you know that they cherish the relationship that you have. So all she did is just put this information in front of visitors to provide the value and communicate the value and let them come into the fold. And from there, her great customer service, her strong community, took it from there to make a long-standing relationship. Some things to think about in doing this, and we've all probably have been targeted by this before, but it's, do I serve it every time somebody visits? Do I serve it in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? So that was something that Nikki had tested with. Encourage you, if you're using this, to tweak that as well. But then also, when do you deploy the form? When someone visits to your site, is it 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 50 seconds? In Nikki's case, it was fairly quickly. Within 5 seconds, you got this form. We see about 15, 20 seconds being that nice sweet spot in order to get that engagement when trying to implement something like a Lightbox. So what happened? Obviously, the results were above expectations. 13 times increase in terms of subscribers. She went from hundreds to thousands per month. And if you think about that for a small entrepreneur trying to run a business that has a tight, strong community, pretty impactful. How impactful? It allowed her to launch another revenue stream of her business in the form of an online class. So again, if you think about list growth, a very important part of the email discipline, this too can, if you're an agency and you don't have a blog, you're missing out on an opportunity to connect with people that are interested in your services and/or referrals. So just think about how you could use this as part of what you have set up as your way to connect with your community. So this is an example of somebody who built their list through means of acquisition. And this ties into our next problem, which is what do you do when you have all the customers? You've grown your list of customers to a point where, how do I engage with them more? How do I turn them into something of value? So the second problem that you have is that you're not future-proofed. This is all about the future of digital marketing. And there's a good chance that a lot of you in the audience have tinkered with, have thought about what it means to be future-proof when it comes to email. But there's probably a little bit more that you could learn and could take away. Think about the trends at a very high level. We heard it earlier today with AT&T. It's all about relevancy. Email has been all about and will continue to be all about relevancy. So how are you being more personalized with who it is that you're trying to communicate with? And then predictive. There's so much information that you may or may not be capturing as part of a preference center. What are you doing with it? Don't ask for it unless you use it. Are you using it? If you are, great. If not, why not? But then you think about Gmail and what's happened in Gmail in the last 1 month, 3 months. All the changes that have happened, how is it impacting your ability to get your message into an inbox? If you haven't looked at those stats or haven't thought about it in a way to kind of figure out what's going on, that's something you should be looking into immediately. At a micro level, so we all, responsive. Responsive this, responsive that. Easy to say, but is it easy to do? There's a lot of ways around responsive. Is responsive what your customers want, or is it a mobile app that they need? So do you know the difference between those two and how to best leverage those? And responsive has so many nuances to it right now that it's really hard to generalize responsive as one solution because it's changing so much. And quite frankly, your customer should be influencing what you're doing with your responsive, whether it's how long are you scrolling, how much are you putting at the top, things of that nature. And then integrations. So animated GIF. Has anyone seen an animated GIF in an email they've received from a brand in the last 30 days? Okay, a couple of you. When I say integrations, it's text and image that has gotten us to where we are today. But what are you starting to see more of? Animated GIFs, videos. Click this link to download our app, if it makes sense. Maps, if you're a restaurant or somebody looking to geo-target. So what integrations can you be doing as part of your list? It doesn't have to be very complex. It can be done in a very simple form. So that's what I mean when I talk about the future-proofing your email discipline. Are you considering these macro and micro trends? I want to talk about another example. Anyone ever heard of Johnny Cupcakes? Yes. Woo! Interesting business model. A bakery turned fast fashion apparel company based out of Boston. Not a customer, but an interesting case study. Because when you think about it here's a brand that had such a strong tie from a social standpoint. So we talk about Facebook and engaging and all those things that are important. And it's great if your customers are heavily engaged with you, but then what do you do with that information? And this was an example where a brand knew that they had a very strong following in social, but knew they had to be more relevant because their email program was, in their mind, okay. It was adequate. So how do I take this information, couple it with this information, and make something that's impactful? So what's interesting is that their insights and analysis of their social following actually influenced product development. And what they found was a lot of their social followers, or in their social accounts, all public of course, was a high degree of interest in baseball. They're not a baseball company, they're just an apparel company. So what did they decide to do? Let's make a baseball-themed t-shirt, map it with what we know about gender, and put the content in the right context. And they wanted to test this to see if their assumptions were right. If we know that our followers love baseball, is this going to be enough to move the needle in terms of spending the time and effort into creating new products, but also testing this way to get enough scale between male and female apparel because the fit's different, which is why they decided to go female and male splits. So the content and the context together yielded results that were pretty amazing for them. Brass tacks, couple 40% increase in click-through rates, almost 150% increase in sales. But if you think about it, they knew enough about their customer in this environment, and they had a one-to-one connection with customers, from an email standpoint. How does this information influence this information? So this is an apparel company for your pharmas, your finance, your agencies. When's the last time you asked your customers to influence your decisions on how you actually create your one-to-one conversation? Actually today, another example here, and it happened this morning, otherwise I would have had time to put it in here, but a analytics company sent me an email this morning asking to fill out a one-question survey. Which, you think about it, dead push would have said, are you happy with our service, reply here or do something. It was a one-question survey. And the question they asked was not, what feature do you like? Tell me about your last campaign that you use us for. But it was, can you live without us? Can you do what you do without using our service? Which I thought was interesting. Because from a anticipation standpoint, it took me 30 seconds to fill out one question. But across their user base, they have a lot of information now to then figure out what to put in their product and/or what they're going to mail me based on my response. If enough people say the same thing, we will most likely get a response from them based on our feedback. Just another interesting example. Here are the quick takeaways for just based on the conversations here. And we've all seen this acronym before, always be tested, ABT. The two case studies I gave, it's what allowed them to be successful in increasing their performances, is always be tested. Again, going back to the fact of the discipline is, who here actually manages email for your agency, product, company? That's not enough. That's not enough. It's great, but if all your companies don't have somebody who's focused to this, then that's a lot of missed opportunity. So going to the second, focus on email as a discipline. How can you go back to your career, your place of work, and either, if you're the lead for email, take it back and say, hey, I've got an idea. Here's how we need to invest more to make this more of a discipline and less of the one being asked to just push out an email. So again, that's kind of a takeaway / challenge. Then the last one is a challenge. So we heard today, there's a lot of great information we're getting today. We're all learning something. But for this, it's go back to your respective places of work and go find another 20% of improvement for your email campaigns. Well, if you don't have an email campaign, it's time to start one. And if you have questions on how to do that, I'll be here all day, all night. Not all night, but at happy hour. If you have a list, how do you grow it by 20%? If you don't have a light box, try a light box. But think about ways to increase what you're doing for email discipline by another 20%. It exists. Everybody in this room could be a hero if you go challenge yourself to go find another 20%. That's my time. Any questions?
We got one right here. There's just time for this one.
You talked about integrated content, but you also talked about the importance of mobile in email marketing. Can you maybe explain a little bit about how to make sure the content that you're integrating is going to work on mobile?
The content that you're integrating is going to work on mobile.
Like videos, images, things like that?
Sure. Depending on how you're delivering your emails, whichever service provider you're using, assuming you're using one, should have responsive templates available, but you should be able to preview what that looks like before you send it out. So if the question is, I think you're asking, what is it going to look like before I actually deploy it?
Actually, but like when I receive email on my iPhone,
Yep.
I automatically go down on images.
Right.
The main thrust of that email is the image, and they're not going to be able to see it. How do you compensate?
So there's including text to back up your images so that if you don't see images, there's something compelling there. Not just image 1, 2, 3, but it's, it actually has the call to action in that. So that's kind of a great question, great point, because that's that's an easy tactic a lot of people miss because they assume once I have images in there, I'm good. So text backup is definitely a recommendation there.
Can we thank Erik?
Thanks, guys.